Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and today we're looking at every single deck that got day 2 at LAIC. Of course, LAIC is basically going to dictate what our format is going to look like in the coming months here until we get our next big set release. And of course, we haven't really been able to figure out what the meta was going into LAIC. We didn't know if Roaring Moon was really all that good, or was Lost Zone engines completely dead, was Lost Box dead? What were the answers we wanted basically got answered here at LAIC, and that's what's got me excited, because we can look at every single deck that got day 2 at LAIC. There was a lot of players here, and a lot of decks to look at, and I think we should get into it. I will leave a link to Limitless down below if you want to go check out the decks yourself. And of course, if you are new here to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We're on the road to 10,000 subs here on the second channel. And leave a like if you want to enjoy. But starting things off with our top 8. So the winning deck, of course, was Miraidon, which was kind of interesting. I thought Miraidon was still a good deck for LAIC. I ranked it pretty high on the top 5 in the tier list ranking. I said Miraidon's still a good deck, and long and behold, it won LAIC. It does play the Iron Hands EX Double Turbo engine, which we haven't really been seeing as much in Miraidon going into LAIC. A lot of lists were not really playing the Double Turbo in the Miraidon deck, but this build does play Double Turbo in Miraidon to attack with Iron Hands. So all you really have to do is generate 2 energy on and then attach a Double Turbo. Finding the Double Turbo is a little tricky because you only play 1, but this list here does play 4 Research, 3 Iono, so it does have a very heavy draw within the deck. And it is just probably, it's a pretty good, like, default Miraidon deck. It's not playing a Judge or anything alongside the Path. It does play a couple copies of Path, but it doesn't play a Judge or anything, which is very interesting. It kind of just goes all in on the Iono and Research engine. It does play, like, an Arven in the deck, obviously, but it's an interesting list, and Miraidon winning off. It's a good thing for Miraidon enjoyers. We do have another interesting development, though, in top 8, and that was Entei Iron Valiant. So I didn't put this deck in my top 5 video, mainly because I said that the deck is probably, like, I didn't think Iron Valiant had it like that. I didn't think it was as good. I would have probably put it at, like, number 11 or 12 in the top 10 ranking. But now that Iron Valiant Entei is proving to actually be a legit deck, this probably has to be in the top 10 now. I mean, this deck kind of caught everyone off guard by getting top 8, and even making it to the finals is kind of crazy, because we all didn't know if Iron Valiant was really that good. It seems to have very polarizing matchups. It doesn't seem to be as consistent as other decks in the format, but the deck itself is just very powerful, and sometimes it's all you really need. Obviously, Entei is a very bulky Pokemon. It has energy acceleration with Mega Basin. You can also play Radiant Charizard, which is really good right now, and you also trade really well into other 2 prizers with Entei's Burning Rondo attack. So it kind of had all the things it needed to be an actual, like, good deck. And you got the Medicham Yoga Loop, the TM'd Evolution, so you do have some other, like, sneaky plays that this deck can also make. And overall, it is exciting to see Entei Iron Valiant do well, because it looks like Iron Valiant actually could be a legit deck now, and obviously this deck's placement has caused Entei's price to shoot up, which is kind of insane. But yeah, no, Entei Iron Valiant looks to be kind of a mainstay in our format now, and I'm definitely going to expect to see more of this in the future, now that the deck has solidified itself as an actual, good deck in our format, and isn't just kind of like an online tourney thing. There was, of course, Gardevoir in top 4. Gardy was, in my opinion, positioned to win the tournament. It was the best deck going into LAIC. A lot of people played it. It was the most played deck. Your deck had to have an answer to it. And that's why we are seeing, like, Iron Hands and Iron Valiant do so well. It's because they are pretty good into Gardevoir. But yeah, Kieran did get top 4 with Gardy. I think Gardy is still a great deck nonetheless, even after the results of this tournament. Gardevoir is still just a very strong deck. Maybe it has to adapt a little bit to Iron Hands somehow, but overall, I think that Gardy is still in a very good spot after LAIC. And, just Scream Tail and stuff just make the deck really, really good. And we're probably going to continue to see Gardevoir do well. We do have a Lost Tina in top 4, which a lot of people are saying is the best way to play the Lost Zone right now. And yeah, that's probably true. It doesn't lose to Iron Hands as much. Doesn't have as awkward matchup like Valiant. You have Giratina, which can be a pretty tough Pokemon to deal with. The deck has comeback potential with Roxanne Counter Catcher. It's got the Path. It's kind of everything you want in a deck, so Giratina getting top 4 isn't really surprising. I mean, it's a strong deck. I don't know if the deck is, like, super good, but I do think that it is still, like, a pretty solid deck in our format right now, and seeing the deck do this well definitely is interesting, because we also have another Lost Box deck here. Now, this one is actually a Lost Box deck. It's a Roaring Moon Radiant Charizard deck in our top 8. Now, this is an interesting build because it's not playing the Radiant Greninja with Roaring Moon, which is what we've been seeing in the Lost Zone and Roaring Moon decks where they were playing Radiant Greninja, but this one's not playing it. It's actually just playing Radiant Charizard instead, kind of as a bigger beat stick. I kind of like this deck. I mean, you don't have the draw power with Greninja, but you do have like more supporters. You got Colress, you got Iono, Roxanne, Claras. You're probably a little bit more consistent. The only downside is that, you know, you kind of don't have the Radiant Greninja snipe, but you do get the Radiant Charizard power, which you can easily build up Radiant Zard early on in the game with Mirage Gate, so it turns Zard into an actual attacker, and then, of course, you have the Roaring Moon EX in the deck, too. This is a very fascinating Lost Zone list, and it'll be interesting to see if this type of deck can continue to do well in our meta, considering Iron Hands, you know, is very good right now. And even Iron Valiant is probably going to give a deck like this a little bit of trouble. So we'll have to see if this deck actually continues to be good in our format going forward. Was another Guardy in top 8. Pretty similar to, well, not the same as Kieran's list, but it had some things in it. It's got the Ionos, the Averys, it's got the Turo, the double counter catcher. Yeah, and got the Screamtail. And we, interestingly enough, saw a Snorlax deck in top 8. I didn't expect Snorlax to do this well. I thought Snorlax was going to get, like, day 2. There was going to be a couple in day 2, but to see Snorlax make it all the way to top 8 was kind of insane, to be honest. I didn't think this deck was going to get all the way to top 8, but here we are, Snorlax getting top 8. Everyone's deck that they love to hate right now. The deck y'all love to hate for sure. Getting top 8 does mean that this deck is actually solidified as a pretty legit deck, and I mean, it's just that the nature of the deck right now, not many decks really have answers to it, and will bother to play answers to it, you know what I mean? Like, Gardevoir can play the Turo if they want, but if Gardevoir doesn't want to play Turo, they don't got to tech for Snorlax. So there's different things that can happen with the lists, and I think that Snorlax will continue to probably do well, as long as people are just not really respecting it as much, or there are not as many answers to it in most archetypes right now. That's what makes the deck so strong, and I'm definitely surprised to see it do this well, because I didn't think it was going to do this well. I was like, yeah, we're definitely going to see a couple Snorlax in day 2, but I didn't expect to get all the way to top 8, and here we are. We got yet another Guardian top 8. Again, Guardy was like the most popular deck in the room. There's no way it wasn't going to get top 8. It's the same 60 as Kieran's, I think, here. So yeah, Guardy definitely proving itself to be one of, if not the best deck in the format. Even after LAIC, it's probably still like the best deck. We do have a Mew that actually got 9th place here, bubbling out. It was a double turbo grabber Mew deck, so it wasn't the Meloetta Mew, which we've been seeing it doing really good in the online tourneys leading into LAIC. It was, of course, the grabber double turbo build. Again, Spiritomb is like non-existent right now. Drapion is also pretty unpopular. The only things Mew has to worry about is probably just like Roaring Moon and Charizard EX, and that's about it. So yeah, Mew still in a great spot in LAIC. I expected the deck to do well because Mew is just still a strong deck. There, interestingly enough, is a Rapid Strike deck here outside of top 8 too. And that's another deck I wasn't expecting to do this well. I definitely think Rapid Strike was like okay for LAIC. I just thought Valiant was a better deck, but it turns out that Rapid Strike is still just as good in our meta right now. And with all the Gardevoir going around, it seems like you just kind of feast on the Guardies. You're probably going to just lose to stuff like Snorlax, because that Radiant Alakazam is like the biggest liability on the planet. But overall, Rapid Strike does seem like it's a decent deck still in our meta. With all the Guardy going around, it's decent. And if we are going to see the return of Lost Zone engines, maybe it's time for Rapid Strike to come back. And I guess it wouldn't have a bad matchup against Miraidon either. And then we got a Charizard deck here outside top 8. And it was actually the Pidgeot Zard deck. Now, I've been saying that this is actually the best way to play Zard right now, even with the TM Evolution Charizard deck kind of being the most popular build. I'm still a big fan of Pidgeot Zard, because Pidgeot is just a very good card. Just being able to get any card out of your deck every turn is just a lot more consistent than having to rely on a Bibarel. Now, this build here does have some interesting things in it. Obviously, the deck has to kind of change a little bit for our new format, playing the Jirachi, and then also playing different kind of tools and stadiums, and not playing the Entei, actually playing the Pidgeot V in the deck, which allows you to go Forest Steel Stone Pidgeot V and then put the Pidgeot V back in the deck. I'm still a big fan of the Entei in the deck over the Pidgeot, but the Pidgeot definitely does have its uses. And then we do see the Vitality Band and the Justified Gloves. Both tools can be very helpful in different scenarios. Band lets you fix math on the 210 damage sometimes, and then Justified Gloves lets you hit harder against Mirror Match and against Roaring Moon, which is kind of cool. The stadium count was kind of interesting. Temple Sinnoh is a very odd stadium to see in the deck, considering Lugia isn't as popular right now, and Collapse Stadium makes sense, but the Temple is definitely a very weird stadium to see in the deck. I'm not sure what matchup Temple's really for. Like, it could be good against decks that use Gift and Jet Energy, but I'm not sure that many decks. I guess, like, I guess there's actually Reversal Energy, so To be fair, it's probably for the reversal energy Guardy. So maybe, yeah, maybe it's just for that. Actually, I lied. I forgot reversal energy can also get shut off by that. There's another Charizard deck here at 12th place. It's another Pidgeysar deck. It looks like the same 60 as the other one. And then we do have a Miraidon. My friend Anil getting top 13, or well, top 16, sorry, with this crazy Miraidon Peony turbo deck. It is playing 18 lightning energy, so it is a very crazy list here, but it's awesome to see this deck do well. It's a really cool way to play Miraidon. It's a different take on the deck. Has some pretty crazy cards in it, like the Peony, like, you know, the 18 lightning. It makes it so your generators are easier to hit. Obviously, I did a video on this deck on the main channel earlier today, so definitely go make sure y'all go check that out. Yeah, I did a video on this deck on the main channel, so go watch that video if you want to see more gameplay of this deck. We do see the Shenpao here in top 16. We all thought Shenpao was like in a good spot for LAIC. And I mean, the deck is still good in my opinion. I don't think the deck is bad or anything. Maybe even still a top 5 deck in the format. Didn't do as well as we all thought. It didn't get top 8, which is kind of crazy. But Shenpao is still just a great deck right now. Still very strong. It feels like if it sets up and gets rolling, it's almost unstoppable, it feels like. That's the big thing. And then obviously the Iron Hands does add a lot of power to the deck. There was another Guardy here in top 16. Like I said here, double Avery Iono. No research, playing double Collapse Stadium and the Artisan too. And we got another Lost Tina here in top 16. Just, yeah, kind of your standard Lost Tina list. But Lost Tina is just proving it's still just a strong deck right now. And that was the top 16. Moving on here, we got a Guardy here at 17th place. Feels bad getting 17th place. Obviously not ideal, but this build here looks like another straightforward Guardy build, playing the double Avery, the Turo, no research, playing the Jirachi, the Luxurious Cape, the 3 Stadium package. There is, of course, a Charizard deck here. Is this going to be the TM Evo Zard? Nope, it's another Pidgeysar deck. And this one's a little bit more interesting than the other one. This one's got a lot more going on. For starters, it's not playing Pidgeot or Lumineon V. It's actually playing Rotom V, which makes sense. You can actually use Rotom to draw 3 cards, which technically, if you don't get Iono, that's going to set you up pretty nicely for the following turn. So I actually don't hate that. I guess Rotom makes it easier to pull off the double rare candy turn 2 when you want to get Charizard and Pidgeot play. And drawing 3 cards makes it easier, especially if there's like a Mew in the active. The double Avery is also pretty interesting. I've thought about playing Avery and Charizard. I don't hate it. Obviously, it's great in a ton of matchups like Shenpao, like Lost Box, Lost Stone decks. Gardevoir obviously be another big one. Could be good in like the Charizard Bibarel matchup too. The Colress and Research split is kind of interesting. This deck definitely has a lot more going on. It's got 3 stadiums too, 3 different stadiums. It's definitely an interesting Zard list, but it's cool to see something like this do well. It's not just kind of a more standardized build. It does have a lot more going on, and it did do pretty well nonetheless. There is yet another Guardy deck here. We're probably going to try to skim through most of the Guardy lists because they're all going to be basically not identical, but they're all going to be similar. Just kind of the supporter accounts are probably going to be slightly different. Got another Lost Tina deck here doing pretty good. And then we got more Guardy to look at. We got a couple more Guardy lists here. Yeah, Guardy with like the double Avery, the 1 Collapse Stadium. Yeah, most lists, again, they're going to look kind of identical with the Scream Tails and the supporter count. Just really going to be like the stadiums and supporter counts is going to be the difference. Another Charizard deck here. This time, it's another Pidgeysar deck. This one, a little bit more of a standardized build. We got the Entei in the deck. Kind of similar to what Azul played to Toronto. Does have that Turo over the Penny. Also playing at the Counter Catcher and 2 Boss. I'm still a big fan of 3 Boss in Charizard, but the Counter Catcher is definitely a big upgrade to the Charizard deck, because now you can play it with Arven, and it turns your Arvens into Gusts, which can actually be really, really good. We got another Mew deck here to look at, and this one is another double turbo Mew deck. Not playing the Grabber, but still playing the double turbo engine, playing some extra, cards like Justified Gloves, playing the triple Judge. A lot of hand disruption. Judge, Roxanne, and Iono. So pretty heavy hand disruption in this Mew deck here, alongside the Box of Disaster, the Gloves, the Quad Path. Yeah, double turbo Mew seems to be good right now. Just again, not many decks are really respecting Mew because they're not playing Drapion. There was an Arc deck here that got top 32. That's surprising. I didn't think Arceus was actually well positioned for this format, mainly because it doesn't seem great into like Miraidon, Roaring Moon. But it turns out Arceus can still do well. And this time it was Arc Tina, a bit of a spicier Arc Tina build, playing a 1-1 Tina as opposed to 2-2, and also playing a 1-1 Superior. But the Superior is really good into Charizard, which was popular for this tournament. There's also the fact that Superior can be good into like maybe Roaring Moon. But sometimes Judge Path is all you need to win games, and that's what this Arc Pile deck proves to do. It's got a lot of attackers in the deck. It's got Mew EX, it's got Drapion, it's got Tina, it's got Superior. Pretty crazy build, but I'm always a big fan of seeing Arc decks do well, and to see somebody do well in this format with an Arceus deck is awesome to see. And Arceus did better than Lugia in this tournament, so yeah, you gotta take that in, right? Another Zard deck here. This time was the TM Evolution Bibarel Zard. So this is the build that everyone was gassing up going into LAIC, and it turns out that maybe it wasn't the best way to play the deck, but it turns out that it's still decent as it did get a top 32 placement at LAIC. The Bibarel TM Evo Zard deck is pretty sick because what you can do is obviously you can TM Evolution turn 1, and then you can set up your Charmeleons, your Bibarels and stuff. Bibarel makes you easier into Ionos and stuff, which is nice. You just don't have the access to Pidgeot EX, which gets you any card out of your deck, whereas you have to rely on Industrious Incisors instead. So there is a bit of a trade-off there, but the deck is still fairly consistent. You can use Turo Scenario to heal Charizard. It's still a very strong deck right now, and definitely is cool to see the deck perform well nonetheless, because I think this is still a decent way to play Charizard. We got another Lost Tina deck here doing pretty good, because Lost Tina is just very strong. There was another Guardy here, another Guardy list playing the double Avery, the Turo, and stuff like that. Just more stuff. I mean, we'll see how many Averys, or if Avery continues to see playing Guardy going forward. We got another Mew here. This one is another double Turbo Mew, not playing the Grabbers, but playing the Triple Judge. But yeah, not playing the Grabbers. Not playing them with Meloetta. It's interesting to not see the Fusion build of Mew do as well, especially because we actually saw some pretty cool Mew EX or Mew VMAX decks do pretty well day one. And I think we'll see a couple of those here. I think there are a couple Mew decks that did well at LAIC that are really spicy. Interesting enough, we got a Turbo Lost Box deck here playing Iron Hands EX, which makes sense. Iron Hands does require a little bit more acceleration. You do have to double Mirage Gate to it. But overall, the deck does make sense because Iron Hands can work pretty well in the Lost Zone, especially when you combine it with the power of Raikou and Dragonite. Yeah, seems like it's pretty good. I mean, definitely cool to see somebody do well with Turbo Lost Box. It's not completely dead. It definitely does feel a little bit weaker right now in our format, and maybe just isn't as good anymore, but it is still cool to see the deck perform well because, you know, there are people that like to play it, and I don't think the deck is terrible by any means. That's cool. The two best performing Lost Zone decks were, well, not counting Giratina, were both playing, one of them played Iron Hands and one played Roaring Moon, and that's definitely interesting to note. Another Guardy here doing good with the one Avery in the deck as opposed to two. And we got more Guardies coming up. Oh, man. We got a Snorlax deck here in top 32. Yeah, this one is a bit more of an interesting Snorlax control deck. It's playing a little bit more going on. We got the Luxray V in the deck. We got the Pidgeot in the deck. Pidgeot is definitely an interesting tech card to see in Snorlax control. Being able to get any card out of your deck is actually really, really powerful in, like, Charizard, but to be able to do it in control is also pretty darn nasty. So it's an interesting build of Snorlax here, and the Luxray definitely is also a really cool card. Luxray a lot of the time can help you beat a lot of like ways your opponent tries to beat you. So you can use Luxray to like rip the Turo Scenario and rip the switches. Like any card your opponent's trying to hold on to, you can rip away with Luxray, which is pretty good. So that's one of the advantages of playing Luxray in control. And we got a wall of Guardy here. Holy moly, we got one Guardy with double Avery. We got another Guardy here coming up. Another Gardevoir deck. 3 Avery, 3 Iono. So a bit of a different, interesting supporter split there. We got yet another Guardy here with 4 Iono, the 1 Avery, the 1 Worker. A little less draw supporters. We got yet another Guardy. Holy moly, a lot of Guardies. A lot of Guardies. But that's what's to be expected. We got our first Fusion Mew deck to look at here. And this one was, yeah, the Meloetta Mew deck. Just a deck that just kind of does what it does. Donks the opponent. It's interesting that it's the first time we're seeing it, as opposed to like the Double Turbo build being more popular. But Double Turbo does get to reign supreme when nobody's playing Spiritomb right now. And it makes sense why maybe the Fusion build didn't maybe do as well. But Fusion is still obviously good nonetheless, right? Doesn't matter if it didn't do as well. Of course, we got another Shenpao here. Now, interestingly enough, Shenpao was starting to tech in the Iron Bundle in the deck. So the idea behind Iron Bundle is if you're in a position where basically your opponent either their active gets KO'd by Shenpao or your opponent has to go to the bench and give up 1 prize or 2 Iron Hands. That's kind of the idea behind the Iron Bundle, I'm pretty sure. That's kind of the point of what it's for. It's good against Guardy, and it can be good in those scenarios, too. And I think that's what, I think that's what the Iron Bundle was kind of good against. That's, like, the reason why people were playing it in the Shenpao deck. So that's cool. More Guardy to look at, because, yeah, Guardy was obviously just extremely popular in day 2 here of LAIC. Got another Lost Zone deck here to look at, and it is a Turbo Lost Zone deck. So yeah, Turbo Lost Box still holding on. This one does have, obviously, some good counters and techs in it. It's got the Canceling Cologne counter catcher, which can be good with Greninja, but also is how you deal with Jirachi, right? You can counter catcher Cologne, knock out Jirachi with Sableye, or whatever you want to do. So definitely can counter Jirachi a little bit harder. You still have the Dragonite Raikou, which can be really good. Yeah, I definitely think Turbo Lost Box is still in a fine spot. Like, it's not the worst deck ever, and I guess with like how good Entei Valiant did, maybe it falls off a little bit still, but still kind of holding on. We're still seeing some people play it. There's another Miraidon. Took a while to finally see another Miraidon. I mean, we saw what, 2 so far, which is kind of crazy. But we got another Miraidon Iron Hands deck here, doing good. Not playing the double turbos, only playing at 13 lightning energy, so a little bit of a lower energy count in the deck. Also, cutting the Flying Pikachu for the Zero Aura is also interesting, and I guess helps a little bit more to like Guardy potentially. Speaking of Guardy, there's another Guardy here doing good with 3 Avery and 3 Iono. We got another Lost Box deck here, and this one is another Turbo build playing Kyogre and Iron Hands. A lot more going on in the deck with the Kyogre with the Iron Hands, but still proving that, yeah, Lost Zone is still good. I thought Kyogre was actually going to be a good play for this tournament because Kyogre seems good into a lot of the big decks right now. Like, you know, Miraidon, you know, Roaring Moon was another big one. Maybe even Iron Valiant if you can get over the Yoga Loop stuff. But it turns out that maybe it just wasn't enough to compete. This build is also very interesting. It's not playing any boss. Actually just playing 4 copies of Colress, and that's it, which is very surprising to see. But I guess because you have to cram in so much in the deck. It's even playing a double Turbo Energy to try to build up the Iron Hands a little bit quicker, which is interesting. We do have our first interesting spicy Mew deck here to look at here in day 2, and that was the Mew Accelgor deck. So the idea behind Accelgor is that it helps a lot against Charizard and Roaring Moon, 2 of Mew's worst matchups. Obviously, Accelgor can one-shot Roaring Moon, and against Charizard, you just go like double Power Tablet, knock out the Charizard with the Accelgor. It's a really cool addition to the Mew deck, and it's definitely really cool to see. It's basically a double turbo build of Mew, but with the Accelgor in the deck. It's a really cool build of Mew, like I said, and I think it's a really interesting way to play the deck. And I don't know how good it'll be going forward because we aren't seeing as much Roaring Moon in this tournament, and the only Roaring Moon deck we saw was just a Lost Zone build. Like, we haven't looked at a Roaring Moon list yet, if you haven't noticed. And then, obviously, Charizard is still really popular, so maybe it warrants playing the Selgor if Charizard's going to be popular still, so we'll have to see. But it's really cool to see this build of Mew do well. It's a really cool way to play the deck. Playing the Selgor to help fix some of your bad matchups is awesome. Got another Zard deck here, another Pidgeot Zard build with the Entei and the Justified Gloves and the Vitality Band. So a little bit more techier for the matchups you want to hit. We got another Lost Tina doing good. Yeah, standard Lost Tina list to look at there. Another Miraidon. Got another Miraidon. Is a Iron Hands Miraidon. Once again, playing the double Turbo Energy in the deck to try to build up the Iron Hands a little bit quicker, and playing the Zero Aura. It is interesting to see everybody cut the Flying Pikachu from the deck. I don't know if that's like optimal or not, but I guess we'll see what happens in the next tournament. We got another Guardy for Iono 3 Avery build once again. Interesting stuff right there. We got a Rapid Strike deck once again. Surprised to see as much Rapid Strike. I mean, we've seen more Rapid Strike than we have Lugia and Roaring Moon here at LAIC, and I was not expecting that at all. So it is interesting to see another Rapid Strike deck here do well. Wait, is that the 70 HP Remoraid? Interesting. That's not the Rapid Strike Remoraid, so that doesn't have the Free Retreat Pivot. That's really interesting. I'm not sure if... I guess that's, like, good against... I mean, I want to say Sableye, but we already beat Lost Box. It has to be for Iron Valiant, right? That's really interesting to see Remoraid, the non-Rapid Strike Remoraid. We got another Lost Zone Radiant Zard deck here. This time, it's not playing the Roaring Moon. It's a bit more of a standardized build we've been seeing from, like, the online tourneys with the Jirachi and the Counter Catchers, the TM Devo. But yeah, this still proves to be a decent Lost Zone archetype right now. Again, with Iron Valiant being popular, we'll have to see how far it goes, but interesting nonetheless. We got another Lost Box deck here, and this one is a very interesting build. Yeah, it's got both Roaring Moon and Iron Hands, making the best of both worlds in one deck. It's cool, I guess. I like it. Yeah, just seems decent. I mean, playing Lost Box with these, like, big, heavy-hitting EXs and V Pokemon makes sense right now, just in general. And maybe it might be better than the Radiant Zard build. Like, I still thought that this build had to be good. Like, not this build specifically, but, like, just playing these big, bulky basics has to still be good, especially in this meta where we're seeing, like, Iron Valiant do pretty good. So that's interesting. We got Shempao here doing good. The Iron Bundle Shempao package. We got more Guardies here to quickly glance over. Yeah, we're just gonna skim through most of the Guardians because I mean they're not all the same, but like they're all just pretty similar in what they do. There isn't really anything special. So they're just Guardy lists, right? You know, there's so many of them. We do see another Lost Tina playing at the Spiritomb, teching for Mew, and it might have paid off. There was a decent bit of Mew here that did well in day 2, so would make sense. We got an Entei Iron Valiant deck. So this is the second one we've seen here in day 2. But it definitely is a deck that I think is just going to keep getting more popular after its performance at LAIC, proving that Entei Iron Valiant is actually a pretty legit deck and not just like a one-of flash in the pan thing. It definitely seems like it's going to be a mainstay in our format for a while. And we'll have to see how the deck kind of adapts going forward, or if the deck changes going forward, I should say, too. Another Guardy here to look at. Another Lost Zone Radiant Charizard deck. And this one, yeah, like I said, kind of more standardized build with the TM Devo, the Radiant Zard. No Roaring Moo Mirage Gate or anything like that, but yeah, still pretty solid nonetheless. I wonder if the Roaring Moo build is optimal over just like the straight single prize approach that the deck does. Considering Roaring Moo does help fix some of your more awkward matchups. We got another Guardy. This one actually does play a Spiritomb, which is something that Guardy wasn't really playing this weekend. This might be the first time we've seen a Spiritomb in a Guardy deck. But hey, it's not a terrible tech card right now. I mean, considering, again, the amount of Mew that was in the tournament. Got another Shempao Iron Hands deck with the Iron Bundle. Doing good. And then we got another Mew Selgor deck. Now, that's cool. Once again, looks like the same build we saw earlier. And yeah, a Selgor Mew looking pretty cool. Again, we'll have to see if this deck, you know, continues to be good going forward, or whether or not the Selgor was maybe just good for specifically LAIC, right? It is cool, though, nonetheless. And, I mean, again, we haven't seen a Roaring Moon deck yet. I'm pretty sure there's got to be one in day 2. I'm not going to spoil it for myself, but there's got to be one in day 2. Another Spiritomb. Actually, we just looked at that derp. We got another Giratina Lost Zone deck here once again with an Avery in it. Interesting. Giratina with Avery is interesting. Another Charizard deck here to look at. And it is another Pidgeot Zard deck, proving that Pidgeot Zard is probably better than the Bibarel Zard deck. And this build does have some stuff. It's got the Vengeful Punch. Another card that I thought Charizard could tech in is Vengeful Punch. It actually does help against Gardevoir, obviously, because the Vengeful Punch forces them to take the 40 damage, which can be pretty good. It also plays triple Artisan over any like Lost Cities or Town Stores or anything we saw in the other builds of Pidgeot. Another Miraidon deck here. Yeah, this one's playing Flying Pikachu, but it's playing the Iron Hands. Looks kind of like something similar to what we've seen from the past format, just added in, you know, the Iron Hands into the deck. And it makes sense because Miraidon is still just that good if it does its thing. Another Guardy here to look at, getting 69th place. Triple Avery Gardevoir. Nice. 69th place. We got another Lost Tina here. Doing good. Tina, once again, proving it strong. 3 counter catchers, that was crazy. 3 counter catchers and 1 boss. That's pretty interesting. It's a lot of Gust, but it seems good nonetheless. Because counter catcher you can play with like Colress, right? Another Lost Zone Radiant Zard. This one is playing that Moltres, and I've seen this before. The Lost Zone Radiant Zard playing the Moltres. Definitely an interesting idea. Moltres is basically like playing Radiant Zards. It's like you have 2 Radiant Zards in the deck. Both cards are kind of good in like the later half of the game, obviously. But Moltres is just great right now into like Gardevoir EX, which is obviously the big matchup that I'm sure the Moltres is going to be very helpful in. So playing the Moltres over the Roaring Moon is definitely interesting, but I'm always happy to see the Galarian Moltres do well. This card is one of my favorite cards ever printed, and I'm just a big fan of it, and I'm glad to see it always perform well in our format. I guess it would help against Mew and Gardevoir, which, again, were both popular. We got yet another Pidgeot Zard playing at the Temple of Sinnoh in the Collapse Stadium package. I guess we'll have to see what build of Pidgeot Zard is like optimal going forward, right? Another Fusion Mew here. This one not playing the Selgor, but it's just the Meloetta Ice Cube build. Playing Avery in the deck. That's interesting. Mew playing Avery does make sense. It's not surprising to see it do that. It actually seems like a decent one of to play in Mew, actually, is the one of Avery. We got yet another Entei Iron Valiant deck here. Doing pretty good. And, yeah, proving that Entei Iron Valiant is just a strong deck. And we'll have to see where the deck continues going forward. We got another Fusion build of Mew. Not playing the Ice Cube, just going more for the Meloetta. It is playing the Oricorio in the deck, however, which is something a little bit different. Then we do see the Pidgeot Zard here. This one did tech for the Snorlax. We see it is playing the one of Minior in the deck, which makes sense. Minior does have some advantages in the Bibarel Zard deck because you can use it to counter Snorlax, and that's like the main reason why you would want to play Minior in the deck overall. But yeah, we see the Bibarel Zard deck doing well. Not playing a Turo, though, is interesting. Not playing the Turo is definitely an interesting way to go, for sure. Another Shempao Iron Hands deck here, not playing the bundle. We do see, now this one is exciting, we see a Lugia deck here finally. Surprisingly enough, we didn't see any other Lugias up to this point, which I thought Lugia was actually still a decent play for this tournament, but surprisingly enough, it didn't do as good. Now this one is not playing the Iron Hands. It is still playing the Vessels, but it's actually leaning more towards using Charizard and Lumineon as your 2 main attackers. Also playing a Clara. That's interesting. Clara over Thornton in the deck. I mean, I guess kind of makes the same difference, but I guess you can get 2 Pokemon back as opposed to just using the Thornton to get the 1 Pokemon back, which I guess can actually be a little bit more useful when you want to get like Snorlax back or something. So that's interesting. But the first highest placing Lugia deck we've seen, it's not playing the Iron Hands, but still playing the Vessels. We see yet another Shempao here. It's Jared Grimes' Shempao list with the Iron Hands. And the best part about it, bro, we got Zorobox in day 2. I was hoping to see a couple of these in day 2, and it looks like I got my wish. Now, this one is interesting. It's not playing any copies of Double Turbo Energy. It's playing double Cynthia's Ambition, no research, playing Counter Catchers over Boss, playing an interesting attacking package, playing Jolteon in the deck, too, right? It's playing the Scovillain, obviously. You got the Mighty Anna, you got the Cleaver, the Double Scizor. But yeah, it's a very interesting build of Zorobox. A little bit different from what I've been playing, but still cool to see Zorobox get day 2. And I really hope that we continue to see Zorobox do good in these tournaments, because I'm a big fan of it. So it is cool to see it nonetheless. We do have another Bibarel Zard deck here, playing an Entei V in the deck. So kind of similar to the Pidgeot build, but just playing the Bibarels instead. We got another Lost Tina doing good with the Spiritomb in the deck. Gonna try to skim through some of these a little bit quicker. We got a Cloth deck in day 2. That's pretty exciting to see. I know a lot of Cloth enjoyers out there. Cloth did win on stream actually against Gardevoir, which is considered to be Cloth's like potentially one of its worst matchups, apart from Lugia and probably Mew. But it's cool to see Cloth do well. The deck is a lot of fun to play. I think it's still like not a bad deck right now. And with Miraidon winning, I mean, hey, it's not the worst time to play Cloth. Because it's a cool deck. I mean, it was a 1-of in day 2, I think, but still is nonetheless cool to see. We got another Snorlax control deck here to look at. This one does have some spice. It is playing that Tatsugiri, which allows you to get any 2 cards of your deck and then switch it. So you can actually switch it into the Snorlax, right? So that's kind of a cool concept. But yeah, Tatsugiri Snorlax control is interesting. It's a different way to play the deck, and the Tatsugiri, I think, has potential. Being able to grab any 2 cards of your deck is cool. It's also playing the Crabominable in the deck for a bit of mill, which can help quite a bit too. We got back-to-back Lugia decks here in day 2. This time, yeah, okay, here we go. We got the Iron Hands Vessel build of Lugia, which I thought was still the best way to play the deck, so it is cool to see it do well. It wasn't the highest placing Lugia deck, ironically enough, but it was still cool to see Iron Hands. And then I think there's another Lugia here. Is this going to be also the Iron Hands build? It is the Iron Hands build of Lugia, also getting day 2. Exciting stuff, exciting stuff. We got a Guardy to look at here again with the triple Avrian. Look at that. We got our first Roaring Moon deck to look at. Yeah, Roaring Moon, the first Roaring Moon deck to look at here. Kind of crazy that this is the first time we're going to be looking at Roaring Moon in day 2 of LAIC, considering it was a pretty hyped up deck for the tournament. Surprisingly, it just underperformed and didn't do as well as we all thought. There was a Roaring Moon in top 8 because they played it in the Lost Zone engine, but it wasn't the turbo build here. But we'll see if Roaring Moon continues to, you know, decline a little bit in popularity. Obviously, it's going to be really popular on TCG Live, because Live is inflated by the fact that it's a free deck, whereas IRL, it turns out Roaring Moon might just be a pretty middle-of-the-road deck, because this was the highest-placing Roaring Moon deck. Got 90th place overall. Got a couple more Guardies here, back-to-back. Just more Guardy doing Guardy stuff, obviously. We can look at another deck here. We got the Lost Tina. Just more Lost Tina stuff. Yeah, we're just gonna kind of skim through some of these decks we've already kind of seen. We got another TM Evo Bibarel Charizard deck here. Another Snorlax deck here in day 2. A lot more Snorlax in day 2 than I would have expected, especially since I got top 8. But it looks like a more standardized build with the Crabominable V in the deck. We got more Charizards, 2 Charizards to look at. We got a Pidgeot Zard deck playing the Minior, so teching for the Snorlax control matchup. And then we got another Charizard deck here with the Entei V, no Minior. Playing only 1 Lost City. That's interesting. Only 1 Stadium, but got the double vacuum. Kind of greedy, but yeah, it can make sense sometimes. We do see another Lost Tina here. A lot of Lost Tina in day 2. No surprise there. It's a pretty solid deck. We got another Lugia to look at. It was another Lugia Iron Hands Earthen Vessel deck here. So that's interesting, yeah. Again, Lugia didn't perform as well as I would have thought. I actually thought we were going to see like, at least a Lugia in like maybe top 16. Maybe even top 8, to be honest with you. So not seeing Lugia do as well, yeah, it's interesting. And it's kind of sad to see, because I kind of put a little bit of hope in the deck, man. I put a bit of hope in the deck. More Tina. Another Zard deck here to look at. It's another Bibarel TM Evolution Charizard deck here. A little bit more straightforward with what it had in the list. Yeah, another Lost Tina. And then the next deck here to look at, besides the Tina, is another Miraidon deck. So another Miraidon Iron Hands deck with the double turbo. I mean, there wasn't as much Miraidon in day 2 as I would have expected either, but it did win the tournament. So, I mean, that's just definitely going to change like the next major tournament, right? It's like not as much Miraidon as I expected, but because it won, we're going to probably just see more in general. We got more Guardy here. And then we got another Lost Zone, and this time it is another Dragonite deck with the Kyogre. So not playing Raikou V, actually opting just for Dragonite V and the Kyogre. But I thought Kyogre was still decent for the tournament, but with like the low showing of like Roaring Moon maybe wasn't as good, but maybe a Kyogre can rebound a little bit with Miraidon doing good. But it depends really if I guess you can beat Iron Hands. That's like the big thing with Kyogres. Like Kyogre seems to be good in Miraidon, but can it really beat the Iron Hands? That's going to be the ultimate test the deck has to get over, right? Another Pidgeot Zard deck here. Nice stuff going on there. More Tina's back-to-back. I'm going to quickly skim through these real quick. Because they're, I mean, most Tina lists at this point are kind of like almost identical 60s. Like, the 60s almost been basically figured out. Same thing with Shempao. We can just kind of skim through the Shempao list because they've all been practically figured out. Another Aselgor Mew deck here. Really cool. Again, we'll see if the Aselgor becomes kind of a mainstay going forward. I would want to say no because Roaring Moon wasn't as popular for this tournament and didn't do as well, but maybe that's good. Maybe the deck doing not as good means that people won't really think about it as much, and it'll make its stonks go way up. Another Guardy here doing good. Another Lost Tina here. With the Shaman V. Shaman V isn't a terrible card to play. Definitely can help against the Charizard matchup, which I already think is pretty favored for you, but I guess it just makes it that much more favored. And, again, can help against Roaring Moon, too, if you ever need it for that matchup, I guess. So there you go. We got another Lugia here. It sucks that all the Lugias were at the bottom of day 2. This was a colorless Lugia, though. Wasn't the Iron Hands Vessel build. It was just a straightforward colorless build of Lugia, which still wasn't, like, terrible for this tournament, in my opinion. Another Iron Hand Shempao. Just going to skim through that. Another Lost Zone Radiant Charizard. Another traditional build with the Articuno this time to help Cram do a little bit more damage against stuff like the Cresselia, which makes sense. Yep, another Lost Tina. Again, we can just skim through that because, I mean, all those 60s are pretty similar, right? And we got another Roaring Moon here. Again, a lot of Roaring Moon near the bottom of the day 2 bracket. Kind of crazy to see. But yeah, Roaring Moon, I guess, just didn't have the performance it really wanted to. It is just surprising to see. We'll have to see if Roaring Moon can kind of recover from its underperformance at LAIC. Or if it's maybe just like kind of a one-time thing where like, okay, it underperformed, but maybe it'll do good. We see a Cross-Witcher Cologne build of Shempao, so kind of playing a best of both worlds, playing the Iron Hands and the Cross-Witcher Cologne with the Greninja, so it's interesting. Another Lugia deck here to look at. It is another Iron Hands Lugia. Not playing the Radiant Zard, though, with the Fire is interesting. I guess it's a colorless Lugia deck. It's also playing the Weird Ear. Not playing Zard is interesting. I guess it's colorless Lugia with the addition of the Iron Hands, right? So there you go. Another Guardy. Yeah, skim through the Guardy list again. We've seen most of them by now. We got another Miraidon deck here with the double turbo for the Iron Hands. There you go. Double Roaring Moon to look at. We got the Roaring Moon here with the Water Energy. And then we got another Roaring Moon to look at here with the Water Energy again. And Minior in the Glaring Moltres. Minior to tech for Snorlax, I guess. I mean, makes sense. Makes sense, I guess. Playing an Avery, too, as your extra supporter card besides the Sawdon bosses. Also interesting. Another Fusion Mew here with the Meloetta and the Ice Cube. Yeah, we'll skim through some of these decks here real quick. We're almost done. We got a couple Guardies. Yeah, Guardy once again. One Guardy. We got two Guardies. Yeah, just skim through most of these because at this point we've kind of seen all the Guardy lists. Same thing with like Giratina. We've seen most of the Giratina lists. But I think it's cool to like look at every single list just to see. We got another Roaring Moon deck here. Again, really interesting to see Roaring Moon be at like the bottom of the thing at the day 2. It's playing Cologne Cross-Witcher though, so trying to lead more into the Greninja there, it looks like. We got another Lugia, and this one was another colorless Lugia deck, not playing the Iron Hands, just colorless Lugia from like the past format, which again wasn't a terrible deck. Surprised to see no Single Strike Lugia. I'm not sure if anybody played Single Strike Lugia, but it is interesting to see nonetheless. More Fusion Mew, and we got another Roaring Moon here with no Water Energy, so Water Energy less Roaring Moon. And then we got Shempao, Iron Hands once again with the Drapion in the deck for the Mew, which, I mean, wasn't a terrible call because there was a lot of Mew at this tournament. And then finally, rounding out day 2, we have yet another Guardy in day 2. And there you go. That is the entirety of day 2. Surprisingly enough, there was a bit of an underperformance of Roaring Moon, obviously at more of the bottom of day 2. Lugia, same thing. Lugia and Roaring Moon underperforming is definitely really surprising to see. Iron Valiant Entei turns out to be a good deck. Maybe even Snorlax is going to hold up, as Snorlax did get top 8. Potentially, we're going to see some more Lost Zone shenanigans, as we did see an interesting Lost Box deck in top 8. And we did see some Turbo builds still holding out in day 2 of LAIC. But there you have it. That is all of the LAIC day 2 decks. It was cool to see a Zoro box in day 2. That got me pretty happy to see. It looks like Pidgeot Zard is the optimal way to play Charizard. So those are all the big takeaways here with the Day 2 LAIC decks. And there you have it. I will leave a link down below to Limitless if you want to go check it out yourself and sell a list for yourself. And that'll be for me. If you all enjoyed the video here on the second channel, leave a like, subscribe down below. We're on the road to 10K subscribers. And I think that'll be it for me. And I'll see you on another video here on the second channel very soon. Bye-bye.